What exactly is happening behind closed doors in the current diplomatic landscape? Why are the United States, Russia, and Ukraine suddenly intensifying their communication? And why has this moment attracted so much global attention? And most importantly, what does it all mean for the future of the conflict, for the region, and for the broader international community? These questions are being asked more and more frequently, especially after the latest information suggesting that Washington, Moscow, and Kyiv are engaged in active discussions on a possible roadmap for peace. The situation is complex. Each side publicly maintains its own position, yet the fact that dialogue continues indicates that something significant may be unfolding. But what exactly is being discussed? Why do U.S. officials speak about a pathway to a near-term settlement, while Russian representatives insist they are not prepared to make what they call significant concessions? And how does Ukraine itself respond to these statements, especially considering that every detail of the talks directly affects its national interests and long-term security? Today, we will break down what is known so far, which positions clash, where the sides show flexibility, and what this diplomatic process could lead to. Because the most important question remains unanswered. Are we witnessing the beginning of a real search for a settlement, or just another round of high-level discussions without a clear outcome? Let's take a closer look. Recent reports indicate that the United States has intensified diplomatic efforts aimed at exploring potential steps towards stabilizing the situation in Ukraine. According to multiple officials, a senior U.S. envoy is traveling to Moscow for a new stage of consultations. The objective, as stated by Washington, is to evaluate whether a realistic framework for a settlement can be drafted. The U.S. administration emphasizes that it wants to keep all channels of communication open, especially in what it describes as a delicate moment of global security. American policymakers also mention that the goal is not to impose decisions on Kyiv, but to identify a structure that could reduce tensions and open a path toward long-term stability. Russia has confirmed that these discussions are indeed taking place. Kremlin representatives stated that dialogue with the United States continues and that Moscow remains open to conversation. However, Russian officials made it clear that expectations of considerable territorial or political concessions are misplaced. According to the Russian side, its position on core issues remains consistent, and any agreement must reflect what it describes as ground realities. At the same time, Ukrainian officials maintain their own view of the process. Kyiv insists that any proposal must take into account its national interests, territorial integrity, and long-term security guarantees. Ukrainian representatives underline that they expect transparency from all partners, especially in areas relating to sovereignty and future development. What adds further complexity is the public messaging coming from Washington. The U.S. president stated that a path toward a near-term settlement may exist, although he avoided specifying what such a settlement could include. This statement triggered debate both in Ukraine and abroad, especially among analysts who question whether the sides are close to agreeing on foundational principles. Moscow responded with cautious remarks, noting that while dialogue is ongoing, Russia does not intend to adopt proposals that undermine its long-term security priorities. Russian officials also reiterated that past misunderstandings must not repeat themselves and that future agreements require clear definitions and consistent implementation mechanisms. Another important factor concerns international partners. European states closely follow these developments, recognizing that any potential diplomatic progress directly influences regional stability, economic forecasts, and long-term political relations. While Europe supports diplomatic efforts, many European analysts warn that premature expectations could lead to disappointment if the fundamental disagreements remain unresolved. What might happen next? Experts outline several possible scenarios: intensification of negotiations. If the diplomatic momentum continues, the sides may attempt to draft a preliminary framework addressing security guarantees, economic stabilization, and humanitarian considerations, a prolonged negotiation cycle. Given the complexity of the issues, it is possible that the discussions will stretch for months, with each side introducing modifications or conditions that slow the process. Temporary pause. If expectations diverge too far, talks may pause until new political developments create conditions for renewed dialogue.